Starting in 1992 and lasting all the way up to the current day, Cartoon Network has been a mainstay of children's television, airing a wide variety of animated and occasionally live-action content over its 30-plus year history. Man, just looking at this logo brings back so many great memories of mine, watching shows like the original Ben 10, Star Wars The Clone Wars, Johnny Bravo, Samurai Jack, Teen Titans, Regular Show. I mean, the list really is just endless of how many great shows came from Cartoon Network and have aired on the channel over the years. And since it's been over a year since I took a look at the anime-centric television block that initially aired on Cartoon Network back in the day, Toonami, I thought why not tackle what is essentially the block's big brother and take a look into some of the weird and wonderful content to do with CN that hasn't resurfaced or made it to audiences at all. Cartoon Network has some of the most fascinating, and in some cases, most mysterious and obscure pieces of lost media I've ever come across while searching for lost media on this channel, and as usual, there is way too much content from Cartoon Network for me to cram into one video, so if you're interested in Cartoon Network lost media, do let me know in the comments below, and I may make a part 2 to this video just so that I can cover more of it. So, without further ado, let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. Here is the lost and cancelled media of Cartoon Network. The Amazing World of Gumball, The Rex. Debuting in 2011 and going on to become one of Cartoon Network's most popular shows of the modern era, The Amazing World of Gumball, or sometimes referred to as just Gumball, is an animated series that follows the life of Gumball Watterson, a 12-year-old cat who stays in Elmore, California, and has a knack for getting into trouble, along with his best friend and adopted brother, who is a goldfish named Darwin. As stated, the show is incredibly popular, receiving widespread acclaim from critics for its imaginative and hilarious stories and animation, and the show ran for a successful run of 6 seasons, with the 7th season titled The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball, releasing in July of this year, reviving the show. Over the show's run, there have been scenes cut from some of the episodes, and rewrites on certain episodes that have changed the content from their original drafts. However, in this entry, we'll be discussing an episode from the show that was cancelled in its entirety, never making it to air at all. Originally planned to be part of the show's 2nd season, the existence of an episode titled The Rex first became known in 2012 before Season 2 aired, when a complete list of the episodes for the season leaked online. Since this initial leak, very little has surfaced regarding the episode's existence, and we only have a few details around its plot and why it was cancelled. With regards to the plot for the episode, storyboard artist John Texier revealed that the episode would have revolved around Gumball and Darwin trying to help Tina Rex, a supporting character who is a bully in the series, with managing her anger issues, with their little sister Anais joining them at one point, and the episode would have culminated in a massive fight between Tina and her father in the park at night. He also shared a few of the storyboards from this episode on his website that give us a look at some of the content it would have contained, and the scenes featuring Tina and her father, and even though John has the complete storyboards in his possession, he's unable to share them due to contractual obligations. As for why the episode was cancelled to begin with, the show's creator, Ben Beauclair, confirmed on Twitter in November of 2013 that they couldn't make the episode as it was too expensive and was not worth the price. This was further cemented by Texier, who stated that the biggest issue was the projected costs of having to animate Tina, who was a completely 3D animated character, which would have increased costs compared to the other characters on the show. Due to the reason given for its cancellation, fans have speculated that the episode was replaced by another episode in Season 2 titled The Plan, as it was the final episode produced in the 2nd season, as indicated by its production code, and is much less grand in scale when compared to other episodes from Season 2. As of October 2025, nothing else from this episode has surfaced, and it remains quite mysterious, with the storyboards giving us our only glimpse into what it contained. No animation work was completed on this episode, so the remaining storyboards are the only real lost content here, which we know are in the possession of the artist who created them, who is unable to release them due to contractual obligations, making them appearing online highly unlikely for now. Until the day comes where they can be released, this cancelled episode of The Amazing World of Gumball will likely remain shelved forever, and fans will just have to speculate what else it may have contained. Star Wars The Clone Wars Decoded. As what is quite possibly my favourite Cartoon Network show, and the best Star Wars related content since the original trilogy in my opinion, Star Wars The Clone Wars is considered to be one of the greatest animated TV shows ever made, with compelling and thematically rich stories that introduce fans to some of the best Star Wars characters ever made, such as Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex. Many of us who grew up with this series likely remember watching it when it aired on Cartoon Network, but what you may not remember is an alternate version of the show called Star Wars The Clone Wars Decoded. Airing from May to October of 2009, Star Wars The Clone Wars Decoded was a re-airing of the show's first season that featured pop-up boxes containing trivia and behind-the-scenes information relating to each episode. Some of these trivia pieces were presented as in-universe annotations by characters in the episode, while others featured behind-the-scenes or real-world information. As per an archived link on StarWars.com, the entire first season of the show was aired this way, starting May 1st, 2009, and continuing up until Season 2's premiere in October of 2009, and was described as offering a new twist on the series, and serving as an unprecedented primer for faithful fans, as well as new viewers. Since its first broadcast, recordings of these versions of the first season's episodes have become incredibly rare, with the only clip available online being a clip from the show's first episode titled Ambush that shows us what one of these text boxes would have looked like. There are also low-quality screenshots from the first 11 episodes of the season that were uploaded to Imgur by the owner of the website Numidian Prime, a site dedicated to analysing the history and connections that bind the Star Wars galaxy. Additionally, according to users on the Lost Media Wiki forums, there are apparently 2 complete episodes of the decoded version of the show available on MySpleen, these being the 6th episode titled Downfall of a Droid and the 7th episode titled Duel of the Droids, but these are apparently without the credits and are pretty low resolution. That being said, I wasn't able to confirm this and have no idea if those episodes are even still up on MySpleen. Outside of this, there really isn't a whole lot of information or even mentions of this version of the first season of the Clone Wars online. It seems to have been largely forgotten by the wider Star Wars fanbase, with the sources that I've listed here being the only mentions of its existence on the internet as far as I could find. I haven't even seen anyone else really make any videos mentioning it, so here's my attempt at trying to raise some awareness for its existence. If any of you remember watching this version of the show when it first aired on Cartoon Network back in 2009, do let me know in the comments below. Since this version of the show was only made in an attempt to hype up the release of the second season, a home release at this point is highly unlikely. And with that being the case, home recordings may be our only hope of finding the video footage from this alternate version of the first season of what is, in my opinion, the greatest Star Wars TV show ever made. Cartoon Network Battle Crashers DS port. Across its many years of existence, the Cartoon Network brand has seen a number of video games that cross over the shows that appeared on the network, one of which was the 2016 video game Cartoon Network Battle Crashers. The game was developed by Magic Pockets and is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that allows players to take control of characters from various Cartoon Network shows, including Adventure Time, Regular Show, and Steven Universe, among others, as they set out to defeat an army of mirror clones. The game was not very good, sitting at a score of 21 out of 100 on Metacritic and being panned for repetitive and boring gameplay, lacking a personality, and being super generic all around. Since it was a game based on one of the biggest kids' TV channels, the game was released for most of the current platforms at the time, those being the PS4, Xbox One, and 3DS, with it also being ported to the Nintendo Switch just under a year after its release. And while the game wasn't very good, there is an interesting piece of lost media associated with it, as there may have actually been a port of the game in development for the original Nintendo DS. The only evidence for the existence of this port is a low-quality image of the DS version's box art that appeared on the page for the game on the website of the game's publisher, Game Mill Entertainment. It isn't known if any development or work was done on an actual version of the game for the DS, and there's no development build or materials available anywhere online for that version of the game. If there was a port in development at one point in time, it likely was cancelled due to the game being released 5 years after the release of the 3DS, making the original DS an obsolete console, with the last physical game for the system, Big Hero 6 Battle in the Bay, being released in October 2014, and the console itself being discontinued in the same year. Practically nothing else is known about this port, if it even existed in the first place, or why the image of the box art even appears on the website for Game Mill Entertainment. It's still there to this day. If you visit their website now, you can see it on the listing for the game, but there's no other evidence to suggest that a DS version of this game was ever in development at any point. From what I can tell, no one has really found out any additional information on this port or tried to contact Game Mill Entertainment. All in all, it's a super obscure piece of Cartoon Network media that I'm pretty sure doesn't exist in any playable state, although that has been said for a load of Lost Media mysteries before and was proven wrong, so maybe someday we will get a ROM leak of some sort of DS version of Cartoon Network Battle Crashes. OKKO Let's Be Heroes Crossover Nexus 22-minute version. OKKO Let's Be Heroes was a show created by Ian Jones-Corti that initially started as a pilot released in 2013 titled Lakewood Plaza Turbo before having a full series premiere on Cartoon Network in 2017. The series takes place in a retro-futuristic setting and follows a young boy named KO and his efforts to become the world's greatest hero while working at Gar's Bodega, which is a hero supply shop in the fictional Lakewood Plaza Turbo. The show ran for 3 seasons across 2 years on Cartoon Network, with the final episode airing in September of 2019, and was pretty successful, with the series being praised for its humour and animation. One of the series' highlights came during the show's 2nd season, when an episode titled Crossover Nexus aired in October of 2018. The episode follows KO as he finds himself trapped inside a mysterious place where he encounters other Cartoon Network heroes and they band together to escape. As the title implies, this was a crossover episode created to celebrate Cartoon Network's 25th anniversary and features appearances from a ton of characters across the multitude of shows that Cartoon Network has aired over the years. This included the likes of Ben 10, Mordecai from Regular Show, Johnny Bravo, Chowder, Courage the Cowardly Dog, among a load of other characters. The version of this episode that aired on TV was the standard 11-minute length that all episodes of OKKO Let's Be Heroes were. However, did you know that there was actually a version of this episode that was double the length of the final version that aired on TV? The information on this longer version of the episode comes straight from show creator Ian Jones-Corti, who made a post on Twitter 2 days after the episode aired, sharing some behind-the-scenes details of the episode's creation. One of which was the fact that the episode was initially storyboarded as a 22-minute long special episode before being told by Cartoon Network to trim the episode down significantly, which was a disappointment to Ian and his crew. Once this decision was made by Cartoon Network, the team decided to start development of the episode over from scratch, resulting in most of the plans for the 22-minute version being scrapped. A large amount of the original story and plans for this version remain unknown to this day, but what we do know mostly comes from storyboards posted by Ian that give us a small glimpse into the original ideas that were had for this episode. Some of the content of the original version includes a scene where Forearms, KO, Garnet, and Wan are running away from something, a possessed Raven from Teen Titans, a character named the Perfect Ally that is described as Gwen, Cyborg, Steven, and Enid, all mashed up into one another like a freaky sandwich, as well as various other ideas and concepts that didn't make it to the final version. Over the years, we've had a handful of the storyboards revealed to us by Ian, as well as storyboarders and writers on the show like Dave Allegri and Anna Craig, but we don't have a complete plot synopsis or set of storyboards for the original 22-minute version. Interestingly, we almost came very close to having some video footage of this version of the episode, as in July of 2019, Ian Jones-Corti attended RTX, a convention held by Rooster Teeth in Austin, Texas, where he discussed the 22-minute version of this episode.
2-minute version that we did before, and it had just like more stuff in it and a slightly different story, and it was kind of about like creativity a little more. Anyway, the executives didn't like that. So we ended up making the thing that we ended up making, which I'm really proud of and I really love. It's one of the best things we ever did. But we have like all this like extra material that's never been released on it, and we got pretty far. We made like a whole thing. So
in this clip, Ian begins to show a never-before-seen storyboard from the episode, but the recording cuts off just before we can see what was likely the only time a member of the public has ever seen more from this original version of the episode. Given that this was an episode made in celebration of Cartoon Network's 25th anniversary, featuring an appearance or at least a reference to almost every Cartoon Network character up to that point, it seems kind of crappy to me that the network forced Ian to cut the episode down to a standard length, effectively restarting development on it. It isn't even known for sure if the original version only got as far as storyboarding, or if any actual animation was done. Regardless, the only way anyone will likely see more of the 22-minute version of Crossover Nexus is if Ian, or any of the other crew involved with the series' creation, release more of the storyboards, or if Ian makes an appearance at another con and shows off any of the video footage that exists from this lost version of an episode that celebrated a huge milestone in Cartoon Network's history. Hot Dog TV. Over its years on the air, Cartoon Network has been home to some pretty memorable and iconic interstitial content and bumpers. One of the more forgotten pieces of interstitial content to air on the channel was a little series named Hot Dog TV. This series of 1-minute interstitials was produced by the venerable Jim Henson Company, widely known for their work on The Muppets and Sesame Street, and was a puppet show that featured hot dog puppets that were first featured in the Henson alternative stage show, Stuffed and Unstrung. Unlike the Stuffed and Unstrung stage show, which was aimed at a more mature audience, Hot Dog TV was aimed at a more family-friendly audience and had the hot dog puppets shot in front of a green screen. Production on the series began sometime in 2009, with the shorts airing sometime in 2010, before seemingly vanishing off the face of the earth with very little information or footage surfacing since. What we do know is that 12 episodes were made, with us having the title of 4 episodes, these being Arg, which aired on July 15th, 2010, Fiendish Footlong, which aired on August 2nd, 2010, Truth or Dare, which aired on August 17th, 2010, and Put Me In Coach, which aired later in the year on September 20th, 2010. The plot for all of these shorts is unknown, aside from Fiendish Footlong, which supposedly involved a hot dog finding the titular Fiendish Footlong, which ends up in a chase according to a user on a forum. The only video footage that has ever resurfaced from Hot Dog TV is from a user named Fry's Video Archives, who had one of the shorts, the Fiendish Footlong short, archived on a VHS recording of Cartoon Network, which he uploaded to YouTube in November of 2019. However, his upload of the episode is incomplete, with the beginning of it having been cut off. 2 years later, on April 2nd, 2022, Fry's Video Archive re-uploaded the short again, but this time it was in better quality as he recorded it using a better setup, but it still wasn't the complete short. Additionally, Fry's Video Archive uploaded a compilation of Cartoon Network commercials and interstitials that had been recorded to VHS, and in the compilation there are clips of some episodes of Hot Dog TV, with one clip coming from the Arg short, with the others being from 2 unknown episodes. Outside of this footage from Fry's Video Archive, and a few random screenshots and small clips available from puppetry reels, practically nothing else is available from Hot Dog TV. We barely even know what the show was like or what it was about, save for these few clips that we're lucky to have, and it seems like fans of Cartoon Network, and the companies that produce the show, have forgotten its existence. Given that it's unlikely that it will receive an official release of any kind, since it is just interstitial material after all, VHS recordings like those shared by Fry's Video Archive will be our best shot at finding some more of this bizarre and mysterious Jim Henson Company show that aired on Cartoon Network. The Moxy Show. The Moxy Show was a CGI animated series that was made by Hanna-Barbera specifically to be aired on Cartoon Network in 1993, and was an anthology series of classic cartoons that were interspliced with segments that centered on an anthropomorphic dog named Moxy, who supposedly works for Cartoon Network as a janitor, but secretly hijacks their signal every Sunday. Alongside his friend Flea, they hang out together and watch TV, providing commentary on the shows that they're watching. The show was released over 3 years, between 1993 and 1995, and it originally began as a series called The Moxy Pirate Show, featuring just the Moxy character, before Flea was added in 1994, with the show changing its title to The Moxy Show a year later in 1995. A notable piece of trivia about this show is that it is actually considered to be the first Cartoon Network original series ever made, even though it is an anthology series based around pre-existing cartoons, but even with this being the case, the show isn't archived or available anywhere in its entirety. The show hasn't aired since April of 2000 and has never seen a home release of any kind. Both Moxy and Flea have rarely seen appearances since the show ended, with the only appearance of either of them after the end of the show being a cameo by Moxy in the previously mentioned crossover Nexus episode of OKKO, Let's Be Heroes. The reason for this is likely due to the fact that the show was received really poorly, with voice actor Andy Merrill, who worked on the show, even acknowledging this in a 2003 interview with IGN where he said the show didn't click with people. Despite this, we thankfully do have a handful of clips and pieces of footage from some of the show's segments available online, thanks to fans uploading their home recordings of it airing back in the day. Additionally, animator Brad DeGraff, who worked on the show, claims to have more footage of it on DV tape in storage, but can't upload it to the public, as he claimed that restoring the footage would require financial support, and from what I could find online, there haven't been any efforts to try and make this happen by doing any sort of Kickstarter campaigns or anything like that. Outside of the uploads we have from fans, no other footage is available from the show in any official capacity, and due to Cartoon Network seemingly wanting to bury its existence, it's unlikely we will see an official release anytime soon. If not for such a poor response, I really do think that Cartoon Network would have tried harder to better preserve this show, given its importance to the channel's history, and, at least according to the channel's original president Betty Cohen, the fact that Moxy was actually planned to be somewhat of a long-term host for the channel, until the show didn't connect with audiences. From what I can tell, there isn't really any sort of complete or comprehensive list of what is found and what is missing from this show, with the most I could find in terms of an episode count coming from the Cartoon Network wiki, which claims that there are 24 episodes, although there's no source for this and I'm unsure where the information of there being 24 episodes originates from. Irrespective of how people felt about it at the time, I really do hope we see the Moxy Show released or found somehow, just so that we can at least see what made it so terrible and hated by audiences to begin with. Until it is released by Cartoon Network officially, or more fans come forward with their recordings from the time it aired, the complete content of Cartoon Network's first original series will remain shrouded in mystery. Cartoon Network responds interstitials. In the late 90s, Cartoon Network ran various different interstitials, one of which was a series of interstitials titled Cartoon Network Responds. These shorts feature letters and emails that were supposedly sent in by fans of the channel, with the narrator of the segment providing some sort of witty or sarcastic response to the letters, sometimes making fun of the shows that were being aired at the time on the channel. These interstitials first began airing in 1997 and lasted until around June of 1998, with a total of 20 being made. Of those 20, only 13 of them are accounted for and archived in a complete state, with one short titled The Difference Between Repeats and Classics being partially found, and the rest being completely lost to this day. With the 6 interstitials that are completely missing, we have information on 3 of them, these being All Your Cartoons Suck, that features a letter from someone who doesn't like Cartoon Network expressing his hate for the network, with all of the CN characters crying in response, Secret Squirrel, which has a letter that asks if Secret Squirrel took over the channel, with the response being that Screwy Squirrel took over the channel, and the narrator provides us with a hypothetical situation where he becomes the king of the channel and shows Secret Squirrel all day. And lastly, What If the Flintstones Never Existed, a short that has a fan ask the channel what it would be like if the Flintstones never existed, before we are provided a glimpse into a futuristic world where no technology exists except for the TV from the Flintstones, tuned to only one channel, that channel being Cartoon Network. The remaining 3 lost interstitials currently have no information available about what they contain, as all of the information about the others that is available comes from mentions of them online from fans, and the other 3 have never had that same type of mention on the internet. It has been speculated that the All Your Cartoons Suck interstitial was only shown once, perhaps because the Cartoon Network manager at the time didn't like the criticism aimed at the channel very much, and honestly this could be why these are so rare and hard to find, maybe due to the negative and sarcastic nature of them. The higher ups at Cartoon Network could have been put off and not wanted to air specific interstitials to avoid any criticism. Either way, much like the Disney Channel wand idents we've spoken about in a previous video, and interstitial content in general, it's highly unlikely these would ever be released in any official capacity ever again, as they were made with the sole purpose of being shown on TV at the time. Because of this, like with the content that we already have available online, fan recordings are likely the only way that we will ever see the remaining 7 entries in the Cartoon Network Responds interstitial content. The Lost Johnny Bravo spin-offs. Of all the entries on this list, there is perhaps nothing that captures the iconography, essence, or soul of Cartoon Network more than everyone's favourite James Dean impersonating womanizer, Johnny Bravo. The character is synonymous with the Cartoon Network channel, being the second ever cartoon to air on there, starting in 1997, and has gone on to be plastered over all manner of Cartoon Network merchandise and branding since its debut in the late 90s, even helping start the career of giants of the animation industry such as Butch Hartman and Seth MacFarlane. For those unfamiliar with the show, Johnny Bravo stars the titular Johnny Bravo, a muscular dimwit voiced by Jeff Bennett, who is a cross between Elvis Presley and James Dean, who lives with his mother and is certain that all women want to date him, with the show following his attempts of trying to date said women, with it often ending in rejection. Given how popular the show was, multiple spin-offs of it were produced during its time on the air, and we're going to take a look at 3 of these today as, unlike the main series, these spin-offs weren't preserved or archived as well as the original show was. The first Johnny Bravo spin-off we're going to talk about that has lost content is titled JBVO, Your All Request Cartoon Show, which was a programming block that took the form of a live show hosted by Johnny, where he would take requests from viewers who would request cartoons to air on the channel by calling into the show. The requests could be one episode of any show from Cartoon Network's library, with the exception of half-hour shows, as they would take up the entirety of the block's allotted time, although there was one instance, which is perhaps the most infamous episode of this series, where a viewer named Jennifer called in requesting an episode of Dragon Ball Z, which Johnny played at 2x speed, providing his own witty commentary over the episode. The show lasted for a single season, airing in America in the year of 2000, and hasn't seen much in the way of a re-release since, with none of the episodes being made available officially on any home media release of any kind. With this being the case, fans have sifted through their home recordings of Cartoon Network from 2000 to try and compile what they can of the show, and so far only a handful of the show's 28 episodes have been recovered, with 18 of them being available online in their entirety, while the rest survive through either small clips or are lost to time entirely. While JBVO is by far the most well-known spin-off of Johnny Bravo that has been a subject of much interest to the lost media community, audiences of various international versions of Cartoon Network, including here in the UK, were treated to another show that was somewhat similar in nature to JBVO, titled Toon FM. Toon FM was another spin-off that had Johnny Bravo hosting a morning show with Brack from Space Ghost as his co-host, where, similar to JBVO, Johnny would read fan mail, take requests for cartoons, and speak to fans on call. There is even less known about this block than JBVO, and content from it is exceedingly rare and hard to come by. The information we do know about the show is that assets and animation from JBVO were reused for this series, and that Johnny wasn't voiced by his original voice actor Jeff Bennett, but was instead voiced by British actor Mark Silk. In terms of footage, only a few promos and segments have surfaced online, as well as a commercial for an event called Toon FM Live from Tokyo that included a cartoon Godzilla giving the weather, prize giveaways, and karaoke sung by Johnny and Brack. The final Lost Johnny Bravo spin-off we'll be discussing today is perhaps the most obscure and mysterious of the 3, as it is technically a spin-off of a spin-off, as this was a summer-themed variation of JBVO titled Viva Las Bravo. This version of the block aired in the summer of 2005 and 2006 on certain European variants of Cartoon Network. During the block, Johnny would announce 3 cartoons for voting through either email or on the Cartoon Network website. These cartoons would then be shown the next day for 2 hours, and Johnny would constantly appear in commercial breaks, doing what he normally did on JBVO, answering calls or making humorous remarks. As far as Viva Las Bravo is concerned, that's all we really know of it, as only a few promos have been found for this block, with very little in the way of information or footage surfacing outside of this. The most likely reason for all 3 of these spin-offs of Johnny Bravo becoming lost is the fact that each episode likely aired only once or twice in order to maintain the illusion of a live talk show featuring a cartoon character, and with no home release of any of these shows available, the only way we'll currently be able to find any of them is from home recordings. Interestingly, while researching this topic, I came across a post on the r/Lost Media subreddit by I'm gonna avoid saying that username, where they say that they met Mark Silk, the voice of Johnny in the European versions of all 3 of these Johnny Bravo spin-offs, and he told this user that he has every single episode of these 3 shows on digital VHS in their original resolution. He also told him that he wants to release them one day, but can't due to copyright issues, and that he wants to release them professionally. This user doesn't really have any evidence to back up their claims, and they did say to not spam Mark about this, but if it is true, then this is probably a good sign that those involved with the development of these shows may hold copies of them, and there may be another opportunity for us to see more from these mysterious and obscure spin-offs of Cartoon Network's classic series, Johnny Bravo. Space Ghost Coast to Coast Snatch ending. For this entry, we're going back to the earliest days of Cartoon Network, as the show we're discussing, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, was actually the first completely original Cartoon Network show to ever air on the channel, as unlike the aforementioned Moxy Show, the series was all original content and didn't employ archival footage or old cartoons like that show did. The show is set in deep space and is an animated parody of talk shows, with the show being hosted by a reimagined version of the titular Hanna-Barbera created character, Space Ghost, as he interviews celebrities who appear as live-action actors. The show ended up being popular, going on to spawn spin-offs such as the equally famous Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and influencing other comedians such as Eric Andre with his show that he made for Adult Swim titled The Eric Andre Show. Thankfully, all of the series that was released on TV is accounted for, but did you know that there was one episode of the series that is actually missing its ending, and only one lucky fan was able to have a look at it due to an event run by the show's creators? Now this is one of the most bizarre yet interesting cases of lost media on this list for me, as even though I never watched Space Ghost Coast to Coast, the circumstances surrounding it are super intriguing to me. So this piece concerns an episode from the show's 6th season that was released in 1999 titled Snatch, that focuses on Space Ghost noticing that replicating pods have entered the studio and is copying the DNA of him, his sidekick Zorak, the director of Space Ghost's talk show Maltar, as well as special guest Stephen Wright, who Space Ghost is interviewing in the episode. These pods will kill them if they go to sleep, and after many unsuccessful attempts, Space Ghost fails to destroy the pods. Eventually, Space Ghost, Zorak, and Maltar all fall asleep, and the three pods move in for the kill as the episode fades to black, concluding with an ambiguous ending. At least, that's the ending we have for the episode today, as when the episode first aired on TV, there was an additional scene that promised an alternate ending. This scene was live action as opposed to animated, and in it, a colonial man, played by the show's co-producer Dave Willis, speaks directly to the viewer and tells them that if they wanted to find out the true ending of the episode, they would have to bid on a script for the real ending on eBay, with all proceeds from the auction going to charity. This charity auction went ahead, and, presumably, the winner of the auction was sent the script that featured the episode's real ending. However, whoever this individual was has never come forward with their script, leading to the real ending of this episode to become lost. We do have evidence the auction itself actually went ahead, thanks to a screenshot of the eBay page for it, which shows that an eBay user named Brolly22 had the highest bid 21 hours before the end of the auction. Unfortunately though, it isn't known if this person is the same user who ended up winning the script. However, according to a fan site for the show, the script ended up selling for over $1,000. Information on the script itself is very rare, with our only source of information being what was announced in the Colonial Man scene and the description on eBay, which tells us that it would be a one-of-a-kind ending printed on dual-purpose xerographic paper in 12-point courier font, and it would be signed by the cast and crew of the show. Not a single bit of this script has ever surfaced or leaked online in any form, and none of its content is known by anyone outside of whoever won the auction back in the day, and the writers of the show who have never revealed what happens in this ending. The Colonial Man scene was cut from future airings of the episode due to the time-sensitive nature of the auction, with it being replaced with a black screen and some text that said the end, and there has been little mention of it since the original airing and since the auction took place. Thankfully though, the original Colonial Man scene can be watched on the Volume 5 DVD for the show and is available to view online. As for the script itself though, this is one of those pieces of lost media where we know it exists, but was made with the intent of only being given or shown to a very limited number of people. The auction was held only 4 years after eBay was first founded, so I'm quite interested as to how many people in total bid on this script and exactly how much it sold for, given that it was the late 90s in the earlier days of the internet. Irrespective of that though, unless the writers release the script of this ending at some point, or by some miracle the original owner of the script from the auction comes forward with their copy, there's a good chance this ending may stay lost forever, and fans will never truly know what happened to Space Ghost and his crew at the end of this episode. Ben 10 Pitch Pilot. One of the most popular shows to ever air on Cartoon Network, and a personal favourite of mine, was Man of Action Entertainment's 2005 series, Ben 10. For those of you who have somehow managed to avoid this show and its many sequels, spin-offs and reboots over the years, the series follows the adventures of a 10-year-old boy named Ben Tennyson, who finds a watch called the Omnitrix that attaches itself to his wrist and allows him to transform into 10 different aliens with unique powers and abilities. Using the Omnitrix, Ben battles hostile alien threats from Earth and space alongside his grandpa Max and cousin Gwen. And I have to tell you just from personal experience that this show was something else for kids of my age. I don't think it's any exaggeration to say that this show was quite the cultural phenomenon for us growing up, and I remember me and every other kid I knew being obsessed with this show. I used to get all the toys, watch it any chance that I got, play all the video games, keep up with the spin-offs and sequels. This show was quite literally my entire world from when I was about 5 or 6 years old, up until probably around the end of Ultimate Alien, where I eventually lost interest thanks to the release of Omniverse and that crappy remake they released a few years back. But the original series, Alien Force, and Ultimate Alien still hold a special place in my heart, so needless to say, when I found out there was a piece of lost media associated with the original Ben 10 series that I loved all those years ago, I was all ears. So if you didn't know, Ben 10 premiered on Cartoon Network on the 27th of December 2005 with the first episode of the first season titled And Then There Were 10 as part of the channel's Sneak Peek Week that showed sneak peek episodes of new shows coming to the network. In the years since, as the series gained popularity, rumours started to spread of there being a different pilot episode, separate from the first episode of the series, that was created for the purposes of pitching the show to Cartoon Network. The main focal point of these rumours came in the form of a 2018 Reddit post where an anonymous user claimed that they had found some information about a pitch pilot for the show that was created the same year as the first episode. They claimed that this pilot wasn't actually based on the first episode and instead used the same plot and name as the second episode of the first season, Washington, BC. They also shared some information about the differences between this pilot and the final show, such as the fact that Ben and Gwen originally weren't supposed to be cousins, with Gwen supposedly being one of Ben's classmates who happens to be friends with him, and who is talked into going on a trip with him and Grandpa Max. Along with this information, the user posted these two screenshots which showcase different designs for each of the characters, with Gwen having different hair and a mushroom on her shirt instead of a cat, and with Ben and Grandpa Max also looking different to their designs in the final show. They say that they found these on a YouTube video, however they didn't share the video that they had found the information or the screenshots on, and the user has since deleted their Reddit account, making it difficult to contact them to see if they ever had that information. After this discovery, rumours continued to spread about the existence of a supposed pilot. I mean, if the screenshots surfaced, surely the pilot exists, right? Well, in August of 2020, Man of Action co-founder Duncan Rouleau was asked about the early development of the original Ben 10 during an interview he did with YouTube channel The Ink Tank while promoting the reboot series' film Ben 10 vs. the Universe, the movie. He stated that the screenshots that were found were fan art and were not from a pilot for the show, which cast doubt on the validity of them and whether or not this pilot was even a thing to begin with. Despite this seemingly confirming that the screenshots were fakes, as it came directly from one of the people involved with the show's creation, Rouleau's comments on the screenshots were contradicted almost immediately after this interview, as art director for the first two seasons, Dave Johnson, confirmed on Twitter the same day that the interview was released that the screenshots were real, and that Gwen's shirt was changed from a mushroom to a cat to avoid any drug connotations, making this pilot's existence even more confusing and strange. Any speculation as to whether this pilot was real or not was put to rest a year later in December of 2021 when a user named Roxy, owner of a blog called Ben 10 Lost and found clips of the lost pilot on an archived version of the Cartoon Network UK website. The video quality of these clips is terrible, and they contain no audio. However, these 12 seconds of footage are our first and only look at any kind of video footage from this pilot. The Ink Tank would then make another video discussing the pilot and the clips Roxy found, where she explained how she found it. The video found its way back to a background artist and art director on the original series, Nolan Obine, who commented that it was great detective work and that it was a test for overseas studios, where they would test the studios they wanted to use by having them animate a few scenes from storyboards and would decide based on the results if they wanted to use them or not. Aside from the footage, screenshots, and information that I've shared here, the only other evidence from this pilot episode is some early sketches that show the designs used in the pilot, and a screenshot from Forearms' fight with the revived mammoth in the episode, which is sourced back to an IMDb gallery. It isn't known how this screenshot ended up here, but it can be seen that this is from the original pilot version, given that the background and colours of the screenshots look slightly different to that of the final episode. As far as information on this pilot goes, that's really all we have to go off for now. From what I could tell, nothing else has surfaced beyond what has been spoken about here, and it currently is unknown which other studios created footage for any of the storyboarded scenes, or if a complete version of the Washington BC pilot exists beyond the clips that Roxy found. It is also unknown why Duncan Rouleau stated that the screenshots were fan art when they were actually from the pilot. He either made a mistake and thought they were fan art, or wasn't telling the truth for one reason or another, likely wanting to avoid any further questions about the pilot's existence while promoting content for the new, rebooted version of the show. Regardless, this is one of the most fascinating pieces of lost media I've looked into for quite some time, and I definitely want to see it found someday. It's an important piece of Cartoon Network history, and, if found, would give us the best look at the earliest form of this legendary series that meant so much to me and the childhood of those who grew up loving Ben 10.